Errors are an inescapable fact of a programmer's life. Unfortunately, PHP's error messages aren't always easy to understand. So in this video, I've gathered together a bunch of files that contain some of the most common errors. I'll show you how to interpret the error messages and hunt down the problem. This is probably the most common error message that you'll come across. It says that it's a syntax error and there's an unexpected curly brace, and it says it's happening there on line 22. Now the most natural thing to think is, that's where the problem is, but if you look at line 22 here in my page, the only thing which is there is the curly brace, and that's the clue. It says that the curly brace was unexpected. So what that means is the problem lies before there. It shouldn't have been a curly brace at that particular point. And the answer is that I've missed out the semicolon at the end of that line. So if we save that and refresh the browser, the problem goes away. Missing out the semicolon at the end of a line is probably one of the most common mistakes that people make in PHP, particularly in the early days. It's important to remember that the semicolon is mandatory in PHP. It's not like JavaScript where you can leave it out. The next error message talks about an unexpected end on line 22. Let's take a look at that page. Now line 22 is actually the last line on the page, and it doesn't even contain any PHP, it's HTML. What that means is that something is missing from the PHP, so it's actually gone down to the end of the page and still can't find what it is that's missing. Usually it's a closing curly brace, and we've only got one pair of curly braces here. I've missed out the last one here. So if I add that and save it, refresh the browser, the problem goes away. The next error message has this strange T in caps and white space. Quite what the PHP developers had in mind when they came up with this error message, I've no idea. But fortunately, T in caps and white space can mean only one thing. And it tells me that it's on line 15. So let's go to line 15 of that page. And on line 15, I've got a double quoted string. And at the end of the double quoted string is an element from an associative array. Now the point is that you can't put an element from an associative array directly into a double quoted string. There are two ways around this problem. One is to use the concatenation operator and put the array element outside of the string. The other one is to wrap the array element in curly braces. So if I just put curly braces around that array element and save the page, when we refresh it in the browser, the problem has disappeared. So moving on to the next one, again we've got a syntax error, and this time what's unexpected is double quote. And again that's on line 15. So go to line 15 of that page, and there's my double quoted string, and I've got the curly braces around there, so that's not the problem. There it is. I've misspelt echo. So we'll correct that and save it, and hopefully everything's okay. We've solved one problem, but we've now got this notice for undefined index earth on line 15. Now this is one of the problems with error messages in PHP. They will only detect the first error. You may find that once you've corrected one error, you find another error, and you have to keep on going through the page until you've eliminated all your errors. But anyway, let's try to find out what the problem is with this undefined index earth. So here is index. This is the index of the array element, and it's earth. But up here is the definition of the array, and Earth is spelt with a capital E. PHP is case sensitive, so if I've spelt that with a capital E up there, I need a capital E down here too. So if I now save that, the index is no longer undefined and the page displays correctly. The next error has probably caused more head banging than any other error in PHP, and it's rather difficult to understand until you actually know what's going on. I've got a page here with a button in it which should redirect me to another page. If I click that, I get this message: warning, cannot modify header information. Headers already sent. And it says that it happened in error headers on line 4. So let's look at error headers 1, line 4. And here we've got the PHP header function, which is meant to be redirecting this page when the form is submitted to error headers 2 PHP. Now, there's nothing wrong with the syntax there. So let's go back to the error message, and it says headers already sent by. And then it says output started at this some file PHP and then :5. And what that means is that output has been sent by this some file PHP on line 5. And if you look at the code here, on line 3 we're using require to include some file PHP. So let's have a look at some file PHP. And it doesn't look as though there's anything wrong with it, because all that we've got is a pair of PHP tags and a comment in between. But the problem is that the header function needs to be called before you send any output to the browser. And the browser regards white space, including new lines after a closing PHP tag, as being output. So one way in which to get rid of this problem is to delete those lines so that the cursor is now right up against the closing PHP tag. And if I save that, and we then go back and try the form again, this time I'm successfully redirected. The other way of dealing with this problem, and this is now the recommended way to do it in PHP, is actually to remove the closing PHP tag of include files that contain only PHP code. Let's just add several lines there and save the page. Then go back and try it again. And we're still redirected correctly. So if you leave out the closing PHP tag of include files that only contain PHP, it prevents the problem of headers already being sent. The last error message that I want to show you is a bit of a curiosity. It says unexpected T pamayim nekudotaim. What on earth is that? Well, actually, pamayim nekudotaim is Hebrew for double colon. And in the early days of PHP development, some of the most important work was done by a couple of students at an Israeli university. So they used this Hebrew name. And so if you see pamayim nekudotaim, it means there's a double colon somewhere where it shouldn't be. And in fact, in my switch statement, I've got 2 colons after this case. If I remove one of the colons and save it, the problem goes away. So that's a quick whistle-stop tour of some of the most common error messages in PHP, what causes them, and how to deal with them.